don't know about you, but I get the sense that there is a lot of anxiety and tension around us these days, particularly here in our nation. There is anxiety resulting from the elections, no matter which side you fall on. Anxiety about race relations, anxiety that the world will end now that the Cubs have won the World Series. And then just the general anxiety about getting things done and keeping up with our fast-paced world. And our scripture passages today seem to kind of fuel that fire of anxiety. They speak of earthquakes and famines and persecutions and temples collapsing and nations warring. We can feel our spiritual blood pressure rising as we hear of the hatred and betrayal and insurrections that will come. And it would be easy for us to be overwhelmed by anxiety and uncertainty and even fear of what is to come. And to be honest, maybe we should be a little anxious. Maybe we should allow that tension to move us to clean up our souls and purify our hearts so that when Jesus decides to return, we will be ready for him. Our first reading gives us that wonderful line, "But for you who fear my name, there will arise the Sun of Justice with its healing rays." A certain fear can be a good thing. It can motivate us to action, to make preparations for the challenges that are to come. We can think of how the fear of losing in sports causes one to train a little harder, or the fear of failing a test makes someone study sometimes. The fear of being alone can lead us to establish good and lasting relationships. Fear and even a healthy anxiety can be a very good thing for us, but only if it moves us to action. And this, I think, is the key. If we don't believe that there's hope, that there's something to work toward, that there's something greater on the horizon, then we can be paralyzed by the anxiety of life. But if we believe that there is something better for us, both in this world and in the world to come, if we believe that there is a greater unity that is possible, if we believe that there is a possibility that we can become a stronger community of faith, if we believe that in the midst of all this persecution that we are called to something greater, then we are spurred to action. Then we are no longer paralyzed by the anxiety and uncertainty, but we are pushed to do something different, pushed to be new people, to be missionaries in the way that God calls us to. Jesus prophesies as much in our gospel today, saying that amidst all the fear and persecution, when we are challenged in our faith, that we will be moved to give testimony to what we believe. But, I think it's unreasonable for us to think that if we are living a life that is separated from God, a life that is disconnected from the person of Jesus, that if we're mocked in our faith, that suddenly some sort of magical thing will happen and we're going to be given the perfect words to defend our Catholic faith in a beautiful spiritual discourse. I think it's unreasonable for us to believe that that will happen. We are called, certainly Jesus says in our gospel, you're not to prepare your defense beforehand, but he also says elsewhere in the gospel to remain in me, to follow me, to stay connected to me. And so we can't think that we can just run off and do our own thing, and then in the moment when we are persecuted or mocked, that we're going to be given everything that we need. It calls for a lasting and ongoing relationship with the person of Jesus. And it's that connection to Christ that saves us from those moments of despair and gives us hope and impels us to action. When I was in speech in high school, I was I was in humorous interpretation. I've since lost my sense of humor, but it meant that I had to memorize a speech, and there were different characters within that speech. And the first thing was always to simply memorize the text, to get it into my head. And then the next step was to begin to distinguish between all the characters that were present. It was really an exercise in schizophrenia, but you had to kind of choose a voice. There was a certain posture, and so every character was kind of distinguished in that way. And then the next step was just to rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it. And then the last thing, which was always the most important thing, was to act as though you had not memorized it and just let it happen. To just kind of let it flow. So much so that when people watch, they don't think that they're watching someone act something out, but they are really drawn in to the lives of these characters. And I have to say that taught me a lot about the Christian life. Because in many ways, we all follow that pattern. When we are young, we're taught to memorize certain prayers. And then we're taught how to distinguish when is the proper time to use a particular prayer, or how to behave in certain situations regarding our own spiritual lives and our life within the community. And we're asked to do that over and over again. We put those methods into practice over and over again. But the end game for Christianity is that it just happens. That we are so in union with Christ, that we have so embodied the person of Jesus, that he's become so much a part of who we are, that it just happens. So that when people see us, they don't say, oh, there's a person acting like a Christian. But they say, there's Christ present in the world. So we can say with St. Paul, it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. This is what we are called to. And in many ways, this is what our world needs from us. Not people who have memorized speeches, but people who have embodied Christ. People who make him known by the way that they live, by the way that they love, by the way that they speak. Because in the end, people will not be converted by our speeches. They will be converted by the way that we live, by being attracted to the person of Christ who is present in us. And this means that all of our prayers as adults, all of our prayers have to be a sincere cry to God. Not just a rote kind of routine recitation, but something sincere, this sincere begging to God. It means that each day that we have to practice living as Christ has called us to live, in simple ways, treating people with respect, loving people, reaching out to people who are in need. Look, it doesn't matter who the president is. We can love people. It doesn't matter what our government looks like. We can reach out to people in need. There's no need for us to get caught up in all this stuff, all the tension, all the anxiety. It's real, and I understand it. And people are worried. That's fine. But love, care for people, reach out to people, share your faith with people, because in the end, our government will not save us. Our government is not what leads us to salvation. It is the person of Jesus that people need to know, and they will meet him through us. Friends, this, if nothing else, this whole election process is a reminder to us of how much the world needs us to be faithful to God, to embody the one who has come to save us. And so let's help our brothers and sisters. Let's not allow ourselves or the people around us to be squashed by anxiety and fear. Because we are made for a greater hope. We are made for a greater destiny. And we can help our friends to recognize that by bringing the presence of Christ into this world, by our joy and by our hope.